Good morning, everyone. This is Eric Edwards with ClickSWITCH. We're waiting on a few other attendees to join, and so we'll give it a couple more minutes, and then after those folks join, we'll start. So it'll just be a couple more minutes. Okay, I think we've got a fair number of the participants that registered on the phone today, so I think we'll get started. Hello and welcome to today's webinar on how to improve your onboarding experience and increase cross-selling opportunities with ClickSWITCH. My name is Eric Edwards and I'll be your moderator today. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at ClickSWITCH and super excited to be hosting the session today. With me today are Ben Udell and Jake Ocken. Ben is the Senior Vice President of Consumer Banking at Monona Bank, and he's planning to share a few tips that will help you be more successful with onboarding and cross-selling, along with how Monona Bank is utilizing ClickSWITCH in that process. Welcome, Ben. Jake Ocken is a Business Development Manager at ClickSWITCH. Jake will be running the Q&A portion of today's presentation, and if we have time, we'll be showing you a very high-level view of the ClickSWITCH solution. So before we get into the kind of prepared commentary and discussion with Ben and the Q&A with Jake, et cetera, obviously I wanted to spend a little bit of time to say, to wish all of you some well wishes for everyone in attendance, given the crazy time that we're in at the moment. At ClickSWITCH, we've been, we're hopeful that you and your families and associates are all in good health and spirits as we navigate these unprecedented times. They really are crazy. We've been fortunate at ClickSWITCH to be able to retain all of our staff and have gone almost completely to work at home. And while there have been a few kinks, as you guys can probably think through on your end as well, it's gone pretty well thus far for us. My guess is, and our guess at ClickSWITCH is that you've all been, kind of navigating these crazy waters yourselves, sent most of your folks home to be in remote capacities. I've had quite a few dialogues with our existing customers and prospects, and it's really kind of thrown lots of things and lots of initiatives and lots of things that you all are working on really up in the air. So we really appreciate you all taking the time to spend with us today and are certainly hopeful that everybody's doing well at your institutions. All right, so with that, let's get started. I have a few housekeeping items to cover about the presentation. First, today's webinar will be available on demand after the live session, and you'll be able to access it on our website at any time, so feel free to go back and if you want to re-review it. The first portion of the webinar today will contain some prepared topics and discussions, and the remaining 10 or 15 minutes will be reserved for your questions. We'd certainly like to hear from you, so please use the question and answer panel to ask questions, share your comments, and if you want to, even challenge our ideas. All good. We'll do our best to get to the questions today, best we can, but if for some reason we can't, and you have some follow-up questions, we'll be sure to follow up with you individually, and you'll see the way to get a hold of us. We'll have a slide at the end that will talk about how to get a hold of us and ask for some further dialogue. So happy to spend as much time with you guys after the session as needed. So what I thought I'd do is share a few comments and some insights into the challenge that banks and credit unions face when attracting and onboarding new clients, associated value in insisting folks to get them switched. But it all really starts with the consumer behavior and how the marketplace is responding to consumer behavior. As all of us know, disruptive business models have really been happening for many, many years. As back as you think about the slide that you see in front of you, up to as far back as 2005, and we know these disruptors have been capturing market share by solving pieces, parts, or really the entire consumer challenge to build their businesses. If you look at the slide, you think about, we all know the situation where Netflix completely disrupted Blockbuster. You think about how Amazon has really reshaped the retail experience and how it's affecting all the malls and the retail experience that all of us historically had grown up into. You look at Uber and Lyft and how they've really reshaped the taxi organization. All of those kind of retail organizations or retail opportunities have really reshaped how they serve consumers based upon consumers wanting to be served differently, right? And so if you think about how that's transcending itself into banking, it really is reshaping the banking environment. And what you're seeing is consumers are, thinking about being served very differently because their frame of reference is coming from these disruptive technologies, disruptive businesses, and it's now transcending itself into banking. And in particular, you're seeing evidence of it, right? If you look at non-traditional banks that are entering the marketplace, the SoFis, Ally, Chime Stash, Moneyline, et cetera, and all of these institutions are coming in to serve a consumer base that's really morphed and think about banking very differently. I don't know about you guys, but when you watch TV, unfortunately, I've watched more TV lately than I usually do, but I've seen plenty of Chime messages, I've seen Moneyline messages, and they're all trying to approach your customers and the consumers in general, to get them to move and try to solve that banking challenge a little bit differently. Regulation has really restricted the pace of this change, but the regulatory environment, while still there, has allowed some of these things to happen, and so consumers are actually trying to find better banking relationships and engagements. So it's kind of shaping the thought process. And when you think about the competition and kind of current demands, you think about how this transformation that's in full flight and what it looks like. There's a few bullets here that really resonate. I kind of go to a couple of them in particular. This whole rise in non-traditional banks, the thought process of 1 in 4 people split their direct deposit is really interesting and kind of telling. And it's speaking to the reshaping of how people are thinking about the onboarding process and how critical it is. And if you kind of go into this other thing about 44 million people desire to switch accounts, right, in the next year, that's pretty incredible. 44 million people. I think if you had gone back 10 years ago, so to 2010, I doubt that that's the case. Can't prove it, but I doubt it. I also doubt that 1 in 4 people would be splitting their direct deposit. So there's some things in motion that are kind of leading to this transformation. And then if you think about really the third bullet, this shift in wealth, right? There's going to be a massive shift of wealth that's been happening or being talked about for quite some time. And as people think about things differently, consumers that is, they're thinking about how do they shift and move to an institution that's going to help them. Meanwhile, the shift of wealth is going to those people. So there's some really massive transformation that's kind of hitting the marketplace. You know, and you know, why is that, right? Because of consumer demand. So what's really interesting, though, is that even though there's this desire to switch, there's still friction in the marketplace, right? It's not easy. As you can see on this slide, the biggest reason consumers don't switch, right, is 40% of them think it's too much of a hassle, right? You think about our own experiences as people that actually have banking relationships. We all think it's too much of a hassle. It's painful. There's friction sitting in the way that I'm switching. And 64% of people think that friction is associated with moving bill pay and direct deposit, right? Makes sense, I think. I think about it, me as a consumer. Yet, that's the friction for the consumer. If you think about the challenge for you guys as banks and credit unions, is that if you don't onboard them well to start the new account, the account may remain dormant and actually lose money. But if you can get the customer switched and onboarded well, you can see in this older study, it indicates a value of $212 to the positive if a customer is onboarded and fully engaged. So that's pretty compelling. But we're actually working with a brand new customer of ours that gave us some data from 2019. Their data is even more compelling and shows a customer with a checking account funded by direct deposit is $315 more valuable than their new checking accounts without direct deposit. As you would imagine, the increased value really comes from an increase in use of services. Average deposit balances are substantially higher when they have a direct deposit versus a DDA that does not. Average loan balances are significantly higher, and debit interchange is dramatically higher in this institution that has a direct deposit DDA versus a non-direct deposit DDA. So it's really compelling. You got this older study that says $212 difference. You got an existing customer of ours that's just signing up to use ClickSWITCH, says it's $315 more valuable to have a direct deposit in 2019 for them. So it's really compelling. That said, all that said, the consumer changes, the value of a direct deposit, the value of a PFI, having primary financial institution status with the customer is probably not telling you a whole lot that you didn't know, right? The value of getting that direct deposit during the onboarding experience and moving into the preferred spot of PFI is substantial. You guys have known it for many, many years, but it should help revalidate that, right? And so how do you think about the onboarding experience differently? We have customers who are using ClickSWITCH as an enabling technology to allow them to change that mindset, change their mindset and actions relative to onboarding. And Monona Bank, Ben from Monona Bank has a great story to tell you about how they have changed. The bank has changed its mindset and its actions to onboarding and really how they're utilizing ClickSWITCH in that process. So I'm going to pass it to Ben here, and Ben's going to tell a little bit about his story. So thanks again, Ben, for attending, and we're excited to hear your story.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Eric. I'm kind of excited to be here because we've obviously had some good success with ClickSWITCH, and how I started to think about adding insights for the group. I understand there's individuals that are current clients and are not, so I structured my conversation. The first half is more about why we made the switch. The second is probably more of that practical side for everybody, what we specifically have done. And to give everybody some quick perspective, Monona Bank is based in Madison, Wisconsin. We've got a ton of community banks, some large credit unions, certainly some national players, and we have 9 branches, and with the PPP loans, we slid over $1 billion in assets. So, we're kind of that classic community bank that's fighting for new clients. We're growing retail. We have the branches, but we always seem to struggle with the technology side and keeping up with those larger banks. So, it's interesting when we started to think through our new clients and how do we get them onboarded. I think a lot of the stats that Eric had shared with, the profitability of clients, how they cross-sell down the road, now they become mortgage clients, et cetera, we believed all of that. but we just struggled with having a program that simply made it easier for clients to do business with us. And I think what happened along the way, as we talked so much about, this is what we do in the community and these are our products and services, but we wouldn't fight hard to get that direct deposit switched over. And that was simply a huge gap for us. And, one of the big drivers of why we actually ended up coming along with ClickSWITCH and getting on board. One of the things that I think we saw when we added ClickSWITCH right away is that we knew clients would lose some momentum. They're ticked off at their bank. We know the average reason why people change banks is because they are getting feed. They don't like the customer service or a life change happened. And I think what we were seeing was that people would be all hot to ready to move away from their bank. But the reality is, by the time they actually got their account set up, they started working with their employer for the direct deposit, they got their debit card in the mail, that energy and that momentum started to languish. And, it's always tough to get back in touch with a lot of clients. So what we really felt like with the direct deposit is it was going to be the key to everything for us. So we felt like if we just simplified it with our clients, we got the direct deposit over, everything was going to fall in line after that. One of the kind of easy analogies that we think through a little bit is, if for those of you with kids, if you put money into a piggy bank for the kid, and it's the old piggy bank, and you keep throwing money into it, and then you give them this brand new piggy bank with all these bells and whistles, the reality is that they're not going to use the new account, the new bank, if you keep throwing all your allowance money into that old piggy bank. So, when we think about following the money, we felt like if we had direct deposit coming in and it was coming in quickly, they're going to have to figure out how to use their debit card. And so many people are online, they're going to use online, and then they're going to have to pay bills so they get set up for bill pay. Obviously, they're going to write checks. They're going to find out about Zelle. And so instead of talking about all the fancy bells and whistles that we were offering, we ultimately had to take the step back and say, let's get the money here. People will follow the money. They'll use their account if there's money in the account. And that was really kind of this big driver. And I think we knew that ahead of time, but we just didn't have the technology to do it. And obviously that's where ClickSWITCH came into play for us. So as we start kind of also thinking about our ethos for who we were, we knew we weren't going to compete with the big banks for a lot of their technology and their bells and whistles and some of their distribution, but we also felt like we could really compete on that relationship side of the world. And I think it's a little trite to say all of our banks all have the best customer service, because we all feel that way. But with ClickSWITCH, when we started to reinforce and change some perspective with the team, the goal was, let's handhold clients to get the direct deposit switched over. Let's use that relationship building to introduce them to the bank. A lot of times that new account opening process can take 30, 45 minutes, if not longer. And were we getting out of sync with talking about products and services they needed money in the account to talk through? So from a pure relationship standpoint, if we think about what Eric has shared in a couple slides before, that it was just too big a hassle to move direct deposit, too big a hassle to move bill pay, that's where we were going to spend, that's where we want to spend the time to build that relationship and make it easier for clients. So we pushed a lot of chips in on that. The other couple things I'd add on this piece that I think helps us as a community bank be more successful with it is that the technology was also very easy to employ, because it's the web-based version of kind of our branded website that ClickSWITCH put together. We really didn't have a lot of technology needs that our IT team either had to put into place for us, or our IT team didn't have to stress out about from kind of sharing resources or security and everything else. So, that kind of ease and speed of getting up and running with this felt really good for us. We've added some other vendors in the past where it was just a frustrating process to get stuff added, and that usually doesn't help with some of the kickoff for, I think, really making a difference for the product. So we like that. The other thing that was in some ways maybe the biggest selling point right off the bat for us is the Social Security connection. So when we were really debating this, we kind of felt like if we got Social Security figured out, that alone would be a huge win for us. So right now with, ClickSWITCH, we can, when a client's in front of us, or of course we can send it to them, we can get Social Security done within a matter of minutes switched over. So whether that be a new account, or if we're talking to existing clients and are trying to gather a larger relationship, that was really easy for us. And from a sales pitch to my bankers, they also felt like getting rid of the frustration of having to use Social Security, reach out to Social Security, call Social Security. That was going to be just a real simple win for us. And I have to believe for a lot of community banks, the population of our clients fits that demographic, or they're getting close to it. And just that streamlining it was a huge win for us. So those were some of the kind of bullet points for why we decided to push more chips in on direct deposit and take on a technology partner to help with it. I wanted to switch a little bit to, I think, what we've done that has helped make it successful for us so far. The first part is how we've essentially tried to sell the program to clients. Candidly, what we weren't doing is we weren't doing a lot of, we've got ClickSWITCH, come see us. We felt like in the marketplace, Monona Bank is the name brand. That's who they see. That's who they get the marketing from. So ClickSWITCH was more that tool. But what we did is we do a lot of cash offers to clients to move their relationship to us. And we have certain parameters that are built into that. But one of the parameters we ask for is that to qualify for the cash bonus, they need to have direct deposit. We've had a lot of good success with that overall. It rules out people playing games. And what I also think is interesting is if you look at like the Chase sales pitch for kind of cash offers, the whole back page is all disclosures. And so what we really did is said, you know what, if we're going to get the direct deposit coming through, people aren't going to play many games with only sending a small amount. And if we get that direct deposit coming through, back to my original points, they're going to be using the account. They're going to use the debit card. They've got it. Now they can use checks. They're going to get online. They can find these other bells and whistles. So we set that as an expectation to get paid. And what we also do for our bankers is we pay an incentive of $10 a pop for every ClickSWITCH electronic direct deposit submitted. It's frankly, outside of loans, one of our kind of larger incentive payouts for bankers. And we did that because if you go back to the other problem for FIs from an earlier slide is there's a huge gap between those clients that use the account and don't. And as I've talked to some of my peers about this, they kind of feel like, well, how much do you really want to either pay clients or how much do you want to pay your team? What's the value? And if there's a $200+ difference between somebody using the account and somebody who doesn't, it's not hard to throw money at this either to clients or your associates to really make a difference. We're not at the point of going bolder with this, but if we're paying $300 for a new checking account and direct deposit is that key, it gets the money in the account, we do kick around the idea of saying $250 for a new account and then $50 to get the direct deposit set up. And heck, I think for some people that are maybe struggling with getting ClickSWITCH going, imagine for a few months, do you pay your bankers $50? And some of you might fall out of your chair when you hear that type of payout. But the reality is when you look at just how big a financial difference it is to the bank, why are we quibbling over $10 or $50 to pay bankers when we know that the direct deposit makes such a financial impact to the bank overall? So we really try to align that, and I think it also goes back to that number one rule of economics, right? People do what they're incentivized to do, so we've incentivized clients to do direct deposit. Oh, by the way, now it's significantly easier to do that, and we can do that at account setup, and the bankers are incentivized to do it as well. It's beneficial for everybody involved to get that going and keep that momentum. So the last slide I wanted to talk through is how we actually rolled it out. So once we went live with ClickSWITCH, we really tried to make a splash with it. So with the bankers, what we did with 9 branches is we had one banker for 3 branches, and they were the captains. From my chair, I definitely get very disconnected from what happens at the banker desk. I don't work with clients anymore. So I wanted to have 3 bankers I trusted in, that I believed in, and they could be the evangelists for me, right? They had the right attitude, they bought in, they provided feedback, they did some of their side coaching. And what we found is that, candidly, some of the bankers in the branch, it was easier to reach out and get a hold of one of these bankers to ask questions and provide feedback than it was for them to reach out to me. I mentioned before, we increased the banker incentive. We made the decision that I made the decision that if you are doing a direct deposit, you need to submit it electronically through ClickSWITCH to get paid for it. So if they have to, quote, print the doc through ClickSWITCH to submit it, or the client says, yeah, I'm going to do it and talk to my employer, we're not paying for that. We're only incentivizing people if they're using the direct deposit process through here. And along the way, what we've done is obviously some ongoing recognition for the group. Obviously, for a lot of the banks, I bet you on the call, and credit unions for that matter too, you've got kind of this weird middle ground for salespeople, right? Where you want to be more sales focused, but they're really probably more relationship orientated. So we really work some of the recognition angle. I've done that myself personally each month for everybody. We do some awards through that stuff. And none of this is any rocket science, but it all went back to that key theme that if we think direct deposit is the key to everything, then we geared a lot of our presentation to this. We let all the chips fall in after that rather than hoping the client actually follows through on it. And I think that kind of leads me to one of my last thoughts that I wanted to share, or 2 final thoughts, I should say. One is, from a retail standpoint, being head of retail, I'm the one who rolled it out. And I've heard other banks have rolled it out either through IT or for marketing, or they think that the product is this kind of standalone and clients will find it. And we just didn't feel like that was true. Clients still need to be educated about it. They still need some follow-up at times. You still need to continue the onboarding experience after the direct deposit is here. So I still dig into the numbers. I still do outreach on it. I'm pretty in tune with who's doing what within the branches on it. And I wanted to make sure that that kind of level of accountability was very clear throughout the process. If people had questions or concerns, they could see me. If we weren't getting good results, I would know that, and we could make changes and modify as we needed to. And so I maybe wrap up with maybe one big final piece of advice for the group. When we rolled it out, we looked at, ClickSWITCH having 3 phases. ClickSWITCH can do the direct deposit change, they can do the ACH changes, and they can also close and send that letter to the other account to help close that account. We felt like with new technology, with a new system, something we are still figuring out, we broke those into individual phases, and we frankly just hit phase 1 really hard, and that was that direct deposit switch. So if I had bankers that were not sending a letter to that old bank or credit union that they closed out, honestly, I didn't care. And I think I still don't care that much, because if we've moved the direct deposit over, that account's going to wither and die anyways. And, when you think about the shelf space for everything you need to know, whether it be products, changes, industry, regulations, compliance, systems, technology, if we simplified it all the way down, it goes back to direct deposits, the key to all these accounts. There's a direct correlation to profitability. And that's exactly what we focused on and built our entire system around. So I think I'm going to wrap up there and send it back to Eric, but I also hope that that provides a little bit of perspective on why we moved in this direction, and some practical tips and topics and ideas to what we've done to, I think, definitely make it very successful for us. We're very happy with the results. So Eric, let me kick it back to you.
Hey, thanks, Ben. Really appreciate the information about how Monona Bank and you have changed. You've really kind of set the mindset at the institution, and you've used ClickSWITCH to help improve your onboarding process. And it really does start with that mindset, right? It's really interesting to hear you talk about how you shifted from kind of how you're challenging your staff to do a lot of different things, to say, look, if we can land and expand, right, we can get that direct deposit, we can expand our services set thereafter. And then you took actions and had commitment from the bank, versus just using ClickSWITCH as a technology itself. The mindset to help remove that friction, kind of take control of that, try to remove that, For your customer, the actions backing up that commitment, like incentives, adding it as a performance measure, and really the commitment at the highest level in the bank to getting that direct deposit, really moves that to top priority. So that's a great story. And then making sure that customer is fully engaged via that direct deposit clearly is helping the bank. And so it's great to see that it's happened, that it's working, and that we're a part of that. So we really appreciate that. The kind of piggybacking off of that, I've been at ClickSWITCH for I think 7 months or so. I've had a lot of dialogues with, I don't know if maybe some of the customers are on the phone today, but I've had a lot of dialogue with customers that are doing well. Some customers are saying, hey, why isn't this working the way we thought it would work? Different dialogues like that. But I think what's really, really important, and you did a great job of stressing it, is the mindset associated with interjecting yourself into that friction point and trying to solve that, right? That's a really critical an issue. And then taking some action. You've kind of broken it down into three phases. You've put some incentives in place. So really putting some actions in place to do that. And then that consistent commitment from the senior leadership at the institution to saying, hey, we're going to go do this, right? This is really important. We've got a myriad of clients that I can think of off the top of my head where it's just like you, Ben. It is a critical element to them to remove that friction, and they've got accountability and incentives at their institution to make sure that happens. Super committed, and guess what? They're very successful like you guys. The ones that are, maybe not as committed are scratching their head a little bit, right? So really good feedback and dialogue on that. So I appreciate you sharing. What I thought we'd do, so we got 30 minutes left. What I thought we'll do is I'll skip down a couple slides, and we've got Jake Ocken on the phone. We'll do a quick high-level demo, and then from that demo, we'll move into the Q&A portion. So some of you guys have submitted questions already, which is fantastic. We'll take those questions, but I thought some of you folks that don't use ClickSWITCH would like to see it at a high level. Again, you'll have opportunity to reach back out to us, and we'll show you how to do that. And we're happy to have one-on-one discussions thereafter. But I think I'll jump ahead quickly and then cue Jake up here to actually show you real quickly how it works from a direct deposit and moving a payment over. So Jake, if you're ready, I'll be your slideshow presenter here.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Eric. So once an end user, customer, or member has an account at the institution and is enrolled into ClickSWITCH, that's when we see them and allow them to begin submitting switches. And so there's a few ways that can be done, right? So an account holder, there's two ways, like I mentioned, the standalone version of the product's a white label, everything's plug and play, like Ben had mentioned. No IT work from the institution on the back end. Switch track codes, these activation codes are issued to the end user. And that can be received, again, in branch in sort of this concierge session, or if there's some sort of integration set up with a core provider, online banking, online account opening, in-branch account opening, the end user can receive their activation code in either of those fashions. And so what happens is, when we bring up the first screenshot here, Eric, it's going to prompt the end user or ask the end user, okay, who pays you? Who do you receive that check from? Who do you receive that direct deposit from? And it's going to prompt that end user to enter the name, again, of who they're being paid by, who that employer is. And so once they select who their employer is, it's going to ask them a few specific questions. First one is being, okay, what account are we going to send this direct deposit to? So if the end user had multiple accounts at the institution, or if they split a direct deposit between, say, a checking and a savings account or multiple accounts, that customer or member would have the option then to delegate where the funds are going to be deposited to. And then from there, it's going to ask a couple extra specific, employer-specific questions, maybe employee ID number or district region you work for, branch you work at, whatever it may be. And then once that information is gathered, it's going to bring you to a confirmation page where that end user can review that information. And then from there, it's click to switch. So continue, and that direct deposit request change form is sent on its way. And you're one step closer or that member, that customer is one step closer to calling Ignite Bank here, or your institution, their primary financial institution. And so we kind of highlighted, we touched on the direct deposit aspect of things, but it can also be done to switch over those ACH automatic payments. Same thing, and really everyone, this works in a very similar fashion to direct deposit. It's point, click, type and enter the name of who that customer, who that member is paying their bills to. So an example here is XL Energy, a local utility company here in Minneapolis. Can also be done for cell payments, any other payments that are authorized to debit and pull from that account each month. So XL Energy here, and then it gets into that that payee specific information. So typically an account number is gathered that's associated with the end user, the customer, the member's account at XL Energy. They can plug that in. It's also going to ask, what account would you like to take these payments from? So again, we'll just say that generic checking account. Once the end user hits continue, same thing, it's going to send off that change request form out to XL Energy. Keep in mind, ClickSWITCH, we facilitate, we process each and every switch on the back end. So every time submit is hit on a direct deposit change or an ACH automatic payment change, again, ClickSWITCH, we are facilitating that and processing those on behalf of the customer or the member. So it is off their shoulders, it's off the institution's shoulders to take care of that and facilitate those switches. So that's just kind of a high level run through. Obviously, if there is more information or others on the call would like to see kind of a further, more detailed demo of the product, that's something that we can get in touch and schedule later on. But again, high level flyby of how the solution works. And with that being said, Eric, I'll pass it back to you.
Great, thanks, Jake. Couple things. So some of you that are existing customers that are on the line, that workflow would look a little bit different than what you're seeing. That's the new release of the product. That's actually, we're kind of soft launching into the marketplace right now. So that should be something you'll be seeing here in the next couple months. We're actually going, when I say soft launch, we're going live with 9 clients right now. It's beyond beta. They're actually testing it on live switches. So you'll start to see that roll out to you here in the next couple months. So we're excited about that. It's been some requests from us. Very good user experience, in particular on mobile devices. And then it will change a little bit of what you do in branch as well. So we're really excited about that. As Jake kind of looks at some questions that you guys have submitted, hey Ben, I'll ask you a couple while Jake gets those queued up. So when you think about what you guys did in terms of kind of what I call sifting through the noise of what you're asking your people to do on the new account process, what led you to shifting your mentality to kind of say, hey, if I just get this direct deposit, that's the thing I'm going to be really focused on, and I'm going to be good. What kind of drove you there?
Yeah, good question. I think one of the things I'd maybe reinforce from before is that if you talk to our bankers, a lot of the bankers are, they've been a long-term banker, so they kind of have their way of doing things. And as we rolled out new products and services, some were really good with the mobile deposit, some were really good with mortgage, and it was this very kind of scattered piece. And so it felt like focusing on direct deposit was a centering point for our conversations. If we believe that clients will use the account if money's flowing into it, then what gets those accounts funded? What gets that money coming through the door? I think our challenge was we just never had a really good way of doing the direct deposit, so we never really pushed more chips into making that a stronger focal point for us. So, I think that's a big key. I think the other thing is if we look at, for a lot of us, how many clients come into the branch versus we never see again, we also knew that clients were figuring out how to use a lot of our products and services without talking to a banker, without talking to a teller. So how valuable is it to focus on all those products and services when if we just get the direct deposit for everybody, they're going to find ways to use your bank or credit union?
Makes sense. And then one other question, then Jake, I'll take some questions for you. So is there anything that you struggled with, right, as you kind of rolled things out? And did anything kind of get in your way or any obstacles kind of present themselves?
Yeah, good question. I don't think we had these big roadblocks that we had to fight and battle through. What we did have was this little stuff, this stuff that comes up that we just, you couldn't anticipate, you didn't think about. I'm looking at the questions in the queue right now, and one of them kind of hits at that, and that's the one, let me find it here. Well, there was a question there, I think, about like what kind of gaps did you have with clients, or how were clients frustrated? One of the things that we didn't really appreciate till we got using it is what happens if we submit the ClickSWITCH and the employer denies it. They don't allow it to happen. And interestingly, it doesn't happen as much as you would think, but that was still a gap that we had to fill. And so what we did is we took one of our branch managers, and we empowered her to basically be the go-to person for every single ClickSWITCH and tracking it and following it. So one of the other reports or questions in there is for the reporting features. There's some really nice auditing features. You can see what everybody did, what they submitted, who it was submitted to, what was the time frame, is there any update? And we basically had her run that program for us. So if a client was lagging in a direct deposit, or it got denied, or something funky happened, we didn't have to rely on the banker to be the one to always stay on top of it. Because quite frankly, for how much we want to do a great job with onboarding, bankers are just not strong with that. So, there wasn't necessarily this big roadmap or pushback. It was just one of those little things of how do we keep maximizing this and making it better, communicating, and frankly, that hand-holding to clients is a big part of that too.
Great, makes sense. So what I thought we'd do is Jake, if you want to queue up some of the questions and then serve them up, and then Ben or I can answer the question based upon who it's directed at. My guess is the folks on the phone will like to hear more from Ben than us, which is perfectly fine. But so Jake, if you want to start with some questions, we'll take them.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one that came in was, and Ben, I believe this is probably tailored towards you, but what steps were needed to retrain bankers to emphasize why they should be using ClickSWITCH, and was there much pushback?
Yeah, good question. Let me touch the pushback first of all. I don't think we got, quote, pushback. I think what we got was it's a change, and people don't always do well with change. It's different. It's a different layer of technology, and given the kind of savviness of certain individuals and their level of technology, it was overcoming that. So I think what I would say is I would reinforce how we rolled out the captains. So we had bankers talking to bankers about it rather than myself. And I think what that helped was when a banker was struggling with it, they had a peer that they could talk to about it. If they weren't sure how to overcome a client concern, they could talk to that person. Then that could filter up to myself or my training team, and then we could turn around and maybe more broadly distribute that type of information out to the group. And I'd wrap that up by saying I think the other big benefit was that Social Security piece. For those of you that have had to deal with trying to connect a client, a senior client to Social Security to make a change, it can be very frustrating. The fact that we could do this in the branch while chatting about their grandkids and just get it done, that was just a huge win for some of our bankers to see the buy-in and to really believe it. And then frankly, paying $10 a pop doesn't hurt either.
Great. These next two kind of blend them together, Ben. What are some of the best practices you recommend that your most successful, or we'll just tailor it to Monona Bake, use and are seeing success with, and kind of piggybacking off that, if you had to offer one piece of advice to ensure success, what would it be?
So I see the question is our most successful clients. So that's really us as a client. What are some of the most?
Yep.
Yeah. I've obviously hit quite a bit on kind of simplifying everything. I think we take for granted how either busy some of the bankers are, how much information is out there to really absorb and then apply and stay current. It's amazing how much in the last 5 years, the retail world has just changed. So I think let's go back to, if you had to do one thing, I would say focus simply on getting a direct deposit requested for every client that is opening a new account. Make sure you do the Social Security well, and incentivize and recognize the team for it. None of that's rocket science, but I truly believe, and I think we've seen this, everything falls into place if you get that account funded and money's rolling through the door. So focus on just getting it done.
So I'll add a couple comments to that too, Ben, is because you guys are doing really what I've seen, right? So when I think about our customers that are really doing very, very well, so it really starts with somebody like you. There's some executive commitment at the institution saying, look, we're going to try to take control of this. We're going to try to help our customers onboard more effectively, get them as quickly as we can, get these accounts funded, and they view that as a really, really critical. And so that executive commitment, number one. Sometimes the executive commitment, the executive that's committed is the owner as well. Sometimes they're not. So we've got a customer that's joining up with us right now that just signed up. They're actually just hired. I got an email from them today. They actually hired a person that will own direct deposits. So they have a full-time position that's just aligned around kind of working with us and the staff to make sure that they're gonna be super, super good at getting the onboarding experience squared away and getting the direct deposits, as many as they can. I look at a customer like America First Credit Union, out in Salt Lake, is a really good customer of ours. They actually have the same kind of situation. They have an owner, right? So there's an executive like yourself, Ben, that's responsible and committed to it. Then they have an owner within an institution that's really responsible for training, education, tracking, accountability, rollouts with new trainings with people. So it's really critical that they do it. I think about Carter Bank and Trust, another customer of ours on the bank side, good size as well, and it's just part of what they do. It's an expectation that this is what you do in the onboarding process. So those are a couple things. The other thing I see in best practice is kind of the integration, the ease of use, ease of access to ClickSWITCH, how easily you can do that. There's different ways of getting access to ClickSWITCH. There's the basic way of you can just actually log into it. You're going to ask somebody at a new account level to do that. It takes them some extra steps. You may see some hurdles and obstacles with people saying, geez, I've only got so much time, and then I've got to retype data. If you can get away from that, integrate to your core system, online banking, online account origination, in-branch origination, our customers are doing really well, are integrating it so that it's very, very easy for people to get access to. So you don't get that, like Ben, like you haven't gotten any resistance. You don't get people saying it's too hard for me to access, too hard for me to use, I don't have enough time, right? So that's another area of best practice. And the last thing is exactly what you guys are doing, Ben, is this accountability aspect. There's the carrot and the stick. You guys are using the carrot, right? You're incenting your employees to get the direct deposit, utilize the system. You've got a methodology for doing it. The stick, obviously, is the other side of the equation, is kind of putting it in performance reviews, holding people accountable, sharing the data that, hey, branch A is beating branch B, right? Or person A is doing better than person B, so that people say, wow, I got to get up. How come Ben's doing so well? So we have some best practices, and you guys are doing a lot of them, but it has been a really, really big difference in the success of our clients.
What's interesting, Eric, for your example of somebody being hired specifically for ClickSWITCH is if we partner the dollar change in revenue for those that have direct deposit and don't, and then there's plenty of studies out there on the incremental increase to revenue when people are onboarded well, it's not hard to start generating some sort of ROI to compare. And one of the questions in the queue is, what lift have we seen in deposits while using it? It's been a while since I've looked more closely at that specifically, but it's probably not hard for most of us to simply run, new accounts over the last year or 2 years and say which ones have direct deposit, which ones don't, and you can start making a pretty decent case. I would bet money on that those that have direct deposit have a larger relationship on whole in a portfolio, and then if you get, what sort of incremental lift do you get by focusing on it, how quickly does that pay for either obviously adding ClickSWITCH, I mean, that's a sales pitch for you guys, but putting somebody in the role, greater incentive, incentivizing clients, like that ROI has got to be a fast payback, and you can use it with your own data.
Yep.
Yeah, and you guys kind of both touched on the incentivizing staff. Maybe another question that was down, I believe in the chat, was, can I see which team member is making use of ClickSWITCH the most so that I can use their skills to share best practices? And can we see that? So I guess I can kind of take that question. There is reporting capabilities inside of ClickSWITCH, so you can do staff enrollment reports. So you could see, for example, the month of April, which frontline staff, which MSR, which CSR, how many new accounts did they open per month, and how many did they utilize ClickSWITCH with? And then to kind of answer that question, you can see if Sally Smith at your main branch opened 100 new accounts, used all 100, and saw an influx in direct deposit with those specific customers or members, that is something certainly where you could base it off that report, run a branch-to-branch report based off enrollment for, say, the month of April, and then kind of, again, either incentivize, maybe see which staff need to be retrained, share those best practices, bounce different ideas of what kind of helped with each frontline staff's success. So.
And hey, Jake, I'll add another thought there. When we first started rolling it out, one of the reporting functions in there is who is simply logged into ClickSWITCH, which are my associates. So, if you think about us training for, let's just call it 2 weeks, and then we check 2 weeks after that, we could see who was doing scenarios and who was working through our case studies. And there'd be bankers that would be logged in there a dozen plus times, and there'd be a banker that'd be logged in there once or twice. And it provided a really easy opportunity to focus who needs more support. The other thing that I found really easy is that there's a button where you export all of that to Excel. So it literally becomes your standard basic Excel doc with columns and rows. And if you can run pivot tables off of it or just do simple sorting, you get a really clear picture for what you want. And then what we also do is, I know ClickSWITCH will provide some documents on all of our new accounts, what's the percentage that opened. We actually just do that ourselves, because with our sales promos that we do, it's kind of hard to segment those out for which ones were sales promos and which were new accounts. We take all the sales promos, and I just have a banker go in and basically fill in the ones we did and didn't do ClickSWITCH on. And that gives us yet another barometer of who's participating and who's not, and takes away the larger branches versus smaller branches. It's just straight percentages at that point in time to evaluate.
And a follow-up to that question, it looks like that came up, is, are you able to demo that feature or report? We are able to, I would be happy to show you how that works. It's difficult, though, inside of a demo environment, just because you're seeing I guess, mock customers or mock members that are imported via each ClickSWITCH sales rep. So it's not going to give you a full, accurate look, just because it is, our sales team entering and enrolling members or customers for the sake of a demo. So that is something we could walk you through, show you kind of how it works. But again, you wouldn't, I guess, be able to see its full capabilities, just because it is a demo environment. It's not a live production environment with switches being processed, with real humans being enrolled into the solution. So again, able to show you kind of how that works. Unfortunately not on the call today, but again, maybe at a later date we could schedule a time or demo to walk through those different steps. Eric, Ben, a couple more questions kind of to wrap up here. It looks like, let's see, how do you use ClickSWITCH to cross-sell for other products? Eric or Ben, or else I can take that one certainly as well.
I just say real quick, we focus on direct deposit first. Mm-hmm. Let other things come along the way. I think I've made that clear. We're actually rebuilding our onboarding process right now with all the tools we've been adding over the recent year or two. So I guess I worry a little bit if people want to over-engineer this, then are we right back to where we were at? Whereas let's just get the direct deposit in, and then that's a whole nother kind of program for the ongoing follow-up and relationship building.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, and I'd add to that, Ben, you know, we've been pretty focused on navigating that ecosystem on the direct deposit and payments. There are some other things that we're thinking about, some top of wallet solutions where move your payments to your new debit card, things like that. But generally speaking, we've been really heads down on this new release to make it easier to use and to keep very focused on really an area of the business or an area of the marketplace that nobody else is really focused on. So we're really trying to improve that experience as primary objective number one. What else, Jake? Anything else?
Yep, another one here. Will ClickSWITCH work for any and all employers? If not, what determines that? So to answer that question, yes. So our database we keep referring to of employers, depositors, it grows naturally, organically through all of our current clients that submit switches. In a live environment, you will see sort of ClickSWITCH verified. And that really means that our research and our fulfillment team has already processed a switch from that particular employer. We know their exact method. You know, we have their exact form and how to change the direct deposit or change where the ACH auto pay is pulling from. If there is not, if that employer is not yet verified in our database, what happens is once that switch gets submitted, it is then added to a queue that lives within our research and our fulfillment team, and it pings them. It says, okay, we got some work to do. And they go out and they say, okay, where is your HR department? Where is this company's payroll department? How do they handle the switch process? You know, what exact required method do you guys require your employees to go through to change over that direct deposit? And then we go ahead and verify them in our database. So your next X amount of customers or members who receive a direct deposit from that certain company will then see them moving forward as, quote, verified inside of our database.
Great. Thanks, Jake. I think we got about 3 minutes left, and so I'm going to wrap up a little bit right now. If there's some other questions, we'll certainly follow up. You know, number one, thank you all for attending, right? Ben, thank you for sharing your thoughts and with everybody attending on the webinar. If we did not get questions answered, I popped the slide up here. We're happy to get in contact with you. You can email us at, you know, ClickSWITCH, sales@clickswitch.com. You can schedule a demo there as well. We're happy to get back to you and certainly share the solution, share some successes of our clients, and we'll be happy to get back to you on that. So again, we really appreciate you guys attending. We know it's some crazy times out there. So, you know, again, thanks again. Be safe, be smart, and stay healthy. Thanks much.